You were never the villain, but they needed one. So they pointed fingers, twisted stories, and painted you in crimson lies to cover up the real threat, themselves. They made you the scapegoat because you were the mirror. And mirrors terrify people who only know how to survive behind masks. You didn't even have to speak. Your presence alone began to unravel their illusions. So they did what desperate cowards always do. They turned truth into a crime scene and handed you the weapon they used. But Chosen One, even quiet shouts when God strikes the gavel. Let that sit. Because this isn't about revenge. This is about reckoning. The kind no courtroom or PR spin can escape. We're talking about divine judgment, not filtered narratives. Not karma with soft edges, but raw, holy alignment that doesn't knock, doesn't ask, and sure as heaven doesn't apologize. Science says the body holds guilt like sickness. Shame lives in the gut. Lies rot in the bloodstream. Ulcers, insomnia, heart failure. Now imagine all of that on divine steroids. That's not a bad day. That's a sentence. And guess what? You didn't have to raise a hand. They're unraveling from the inside out, because divine justice doesn't seek permission. The first is that the wound will look like the weapon they used. That is the kind of justice that divine judgment deals with. It is chillingly precise and neither ambiguous nor abstract. When someone intends to harm a chosen one, they often think they are impervious to criticism because of their charm, power, or simple cunning. However, the risk of attacking someone who is divinely protected is that the attack strategy may end up serving as the blueprint for their destruction. They won't only be revealed if they utilized falsehoods to damage your reputation. The same rumors they previously spread will eat them up. Observe how their connections deteriorate one by one until even their shadow no longer trusts them if they attempted to separate you. Their suffering will be familiar, eerily reminiscent of the games they played, rather than random. Divine symmetry is that. Not usually is it instantaneous. For a while, they laugh, brag, and act as if the whole world is their playground. The problem with spiritual law, however, is that it takes time. It watches. It gathers information. People won't even need an explanation when the penalty is appropriate, since it will precisely reflect the offense. They will just nod as it makes logical. And it's the thing that hurts them the most. The justice will be clear. No one will have to do anything because it will be so obviously proper that even they will have to acknowledge, yeah, I did that. In their own hands, the sword they once proudly grasped will gradually turn. God's judgment is poetry like way, not because someone exacted retribution. Collapse is choreographed. It's not symbolic. It's not ironic. It is the epitome of justice. They will not just lose. Their defeat will serve as a reminder of their actions. And there won't be a cure for that kind of echo. Until they fall or learn, it will ring daily. Second, judgment is ripening, not postponed. It's normal to assume that justice will be served quickly when someone wrongs you, particularly if you're one of the chosen. You want to see something happen, some indication that they will be held accountable for their actions. However, divine judgment operates with purpose rather than based on hurry or passion. And sometimes that goal manifests as quiet. Silence, however, is the preparation rather than the lack of action. Often, what seems to be a delay is really a plan. The consequences of sin need time to mature before they fall, just like fruit. While a speedy penalty may make you feel better, heavenly justice seeks a deeper goal. It seeks to expose the whole reality rather than only penalize the superficial conduct. As a result, even if they seem to have gotten away with it, their consequences are really becoming more noticeable. It becomes more accurate and comprehensive the longer it takes. Divine judgment reveals rather than merely strikes. It waits until their pride is at its highest, and they have committed the crime so often that they think they are beyond the law. When they believe they have outwitted the system, that is when the fall is most severe. That is design, not a delay. And since it's so personal, it's awful. This retaliation is customized rather than one size fits all. Whether it's their money, their influence, their voice, or their connections, the one thing they trusted most will be the source of their collapse. When it makes the greatest sense, It appears when people least expect it. Judgment like this does more than merely punish. It imparts knowledge. Not just them, but all others in attendance. It's for clarification, not only for correction. Therefore, keep in mind that you are not waiting for judgment when you feel like nothing is occurring. You're seeing it get ready. Fall is on the horizon, just ensuring that it fits flawlessly. Because heavenly justice never fails when it strikes. It just shows up loaded and on schedule. Third, karma replicates rather than knocks. People often imagine a vague force that ultimately manifests, possibly in a very different manner from the initial transgression, when they conceive of karma or divine justice. However, this isn't how it works. Not for those who oppose them, nor for the selected. The truth is more incisive. What your adversaries release into the world returns in a mirror image rather than just circling back. It doesn't seem random, which is the frightening thing. It is uncannily familiar. Life seems to go into repeat mode. However, they are not in charge this time. Their own character is being killed by the same rumor that killed yours. The persons they trusted the most turn against them in what they believed to be a cunning treachery. They are now stuck in circumstances from which they are unable to escape because of the manipulation they employed to tug strings. It doesn't return poetically. It returns the same results. And it's cruel because of it. It is not mysterious. Wasn't that the same thing they did to so-and-so will be the reaction of others in their immediate vicinity when they see it. Since the pattern will directly point to them, they will be unable to disassociate themselves from the catastrophe. It's introspection, not retaliation. And the reverberation is powerful enough to rock their whole universe. Thanks to divine justice. A comeback like this is never symbolic. It's not a warning. This is the last draft. It's too late to transfer responsibility, apologize, or clean up the damage by the time it happens. They will experience the same suffering to which they believed they were exempt. And they won't require any explanation. They'll realize deep down that they're being written by themselves. They will now recite out line by line what they wrote maliciously in your life. Karma doesn't appear in disguise. Since divine justice may punish without the requirement of imagination, it appears precisely as their transgression. It just goes to replay. Fourth, the blade they sharpen will cause them to bleed. Hurting others and getting away with it, at least temporarily, gives you a perverse sense of confidence. Your adversaries may believe they have perfected the art of manipulation, persuasion, and language. They think they have mastered manipulating people, controlling results, and making severe cuts with no repercussions. However, they are unaware that the sword they take such pride in never leaves their grasp and finally turns against them. They will be betrayed by the same instrument they use to cut through your tranquility, your reputation, and your possibilities. Weapons made with malice are cursed, not because someone fights back. They're never tidy. Every time they injure someone, they leave a trace, and the stain becomes thicker. The weight of it eventually begins to pierce within. No matter their level of expertise, respect, or perceived invulnerability, it makes no difference. When justice is owed, status is irrelevant to the cosmos. Reputation is not recognized by the weapon. It can only identify intent, and the hurt will return home if the intention has always been to do damage. Perhaps their charm, knowledge, or capacity to distort the truth, what formerly gave them a sense of strength, will be the same thing that breaks down. They will speak too much with the same lips they used to deceive. They will enclose the same network they established to manipulate individuals. They will lose the same power they used to destroy others. They were carrying a loaded firearm backwards the whole time, not because they were being conspired against. Everyone is susceptible to the backlash of malicious intent. You can't stab yourself through life and hope that you won't fall at some point. The blade won't hesitate when they do. Who they are is irrelevant. It just respects the laws they believed to be superior. Their destruction will be gradual, evident, and irrefutable, carved with the same precision that they used to ruin others. The fifth is that their battle turns into a trap they set for themselves when you are selected. Attempting to kill someone who is protected by God is extremely ironic. Your adversaries believe they are launching a well-thought-out assault, but they are unaware that the conflict they initiated isn't really a conflict at all. It's bait. The divine does not have to raise a hand or retaliate. It just takes a back seat and lets people battle the demons of their own ego, anxiety, and fixation. Additionally, the farther they go, the more entangled they are in a conflict that nobody else is even engaged in. They will be obsessed with proving a point, bringing you to light, and dismantling you. They also expose themselves in the process. Their plots become more audible. Their ego becomes more ravenous. They get more paranoid. Since that isn't how divine protection works, they are oblivious to the reality that nothing is really opposing them, no force is preventing them, and no heavenly hand is attempting to stop them. It permits. They have enough rope because of that. It lets them make enough noise. It enables people to persist until they reach their own limit, because their ego is the true trap. It gives them the impression that they are winning, that they are intelligent enough to outsmart fate, that they are cunning enough to twist the facts, and that they are loud enough to overpower your arguments. However, each action they do to hurt you adds to the collapse they are creating for themselves. The catch is that you are not required to respond, defend yourself, or even provide an explanation. The more you remain quiet and unconcerned, the more their acts reveal their lack of self-control. People begin to notice at that point. Masks fall off at that point. Because when someone fights against someone who isn't even fighting back, nothing shows their heart more quickly. They will believe they are in charge and push themselves to the point of tiredness, frustration, and ultimately destruction. They're not really battling you, however. They are losing as they battle shadows produced by their own ego. Sixth, because divine judgment is an autopsy rather than an illness, there is no remedy for it. Judgment is sometimes treated as if it may be undone, postponed, or softened with a correct apology or sufficient public remorse. But that's not how divine judgment works. It's the final report, not a disease that requires medical attention. It does not seem to mend. It is revealed. By the time it arrives, the harm has already been done, not just to other people, but also to the offender's spirit. For this reason, there is no cure. You can't use an excuse to break a trend. A life of deceit cannot be reversed by a single epiphany. Surface-level regret is of little relevance to divine judgment. Emotional theatrics and image management have no effect on it. This disclosure exposes the reality for everyone to see, cutting right through the performance. It is post-mortem in a moral and spiritual sense rather than a physical one. Judgment comes after your adversaries have already deteriorated inside as a result of their actions, decisions, and intentions, things they believed they were getting away with. Everything is examined to reveal what was wrong the whole time, not to offer them an opportunity to tidy up. The brutality starts at this point. They are not allowed to go. No recovery arc exists. When they believed no one saw them, they were forced to confront the truth about who they really were. The worst thing is that everyone else can see it. There is no silence when it comes to divine judgment. It ensures that everyone can see what is on the table and turns on all the lights. Punishment for the sake of punishment is not the point. Clarity is key. It's about the last word going to truth. Because heavenly judgment doesn't whisper when someone acts as if they will never be held responsible. It releases the findings after autopsying the falsehood they lived in. Seventh, exposure is the unrepentance money. When someone harms others throughout their lives without regret or hesitation, they are really accruing debt. Not debt, but spiritual and moral. Additionally, the refund is not made in U.S. currency. Exposure is the key. When they fail to accept responsibility, that is the cost they incur, because their refusal necessitates disclosure where repentance may have brought grace. Unrepentant people don't just make errors. They create patterns. While their conscience rots under them, they learn how to conceal, excuse, and distort the facts in order to maintain a positive public image. However, silence in the cosmos is not permanent. The law of God never forgets. Furthermore, it doesn't only whisper their secrets when the tipping moment arrives. They are transmitted by it. Their personal transgressions are made public. They disregarded all of the milder warnings, not because they were unkind. The harsh reality is that the more they conceal it, the more obvious it gets. Not a single secret is being revealed. It's a domino effect. All of the manipulation, falsehoods, and cover-ups come crashing down at once. Furthermore, the deluge cannot be controlled. The echo just exacerbates the situation. After their truth is out, it continues to circulate. Stories circulate when people converse. The sound of their own history, pursuing them, follows every effort to move forward. That's the price for behaving as if there are no repercussions. Your reputation turns become a warning. This is about more than one poor choice. It's about not taking ownership of it, an unwillingness to face the mirror. And shame is the price paid for that rejection. Exposure is the only thing that remains when correction is disregarded, not because someone intended to destroy them. In its most basic form, it is divine accountability. The unrepentant constantly believe that their carefully constructed image protects them. Truth, however, may appear without consent. It only waits till it is irrefutable before fully repaying them. Eighth, some trees develop into nooses, and every sin is a seed. People tend to forget that deeds do not just disappear because no one saw them. What is done behind closed doors doesn't go away. It becomes bigger. Every deception, deceit, and treachery are more than simply isolated incidents. These are deep-planted seeds that eventually start to grow. Silence might be the dirt. There is no doubt that what is planted will flourish, even if the water may be inadequate. Though buried things don't always die, your foes may have believed they had permanently buried their wrongdoings. They may sometimes blossom into unexpected results. The tree doesn't grow in a corner, which is the scary part. It develops slowly, gradually, and obviously in public. The exact things that they accomplished in the dark are visible to everyone. It's perfect time. It magnifies rather than just reveals. They believed they had planted control. They believed they had planted advantage. However, they really sowed the seeds of their own destruction. Sin never remains seed-sized. It changes. It becomes older. At some point, it becomes so enormous and indisputable that it demands a cost. The cost isn't low either. It's disastrous. Because as the tree grows, it does more than merely demonstrate their actions. It becomes the thing that keeps them in place. You can't hide behind it or outrun it. The roots are too deep. Here's the reality they didn't anticipate. The fall becomes harder as it gets higher. Failure was not the only thing they planted. They fabricated their own publicity. The object from which they would hang was planted. In tranquility, credibility, and reputation, not literally. The tale they believed they controlled will come to an end. The risk of believing you got away with it is that when seeds are sown, they don't produce any sound. However, over time, what first seemed to be innocuous turns into a platform for criticism. They will not fall because they were shoved. The tree they secretly tended to eventually grew large enough to be their executioner. Thus they will fall. The ninth is that you cannot pray away a debt that you have decided not to pay. It's a hazardous notion that someone may reverse the harm they have intentionally created with a simple apology or a fervent prayer. However, divine justice is not based on feelings. Truth is its foundation. You can't enter remorse and get compassion from a vending machine. A balance sheet is what it is. Additionally, the price will be due with interest if someone continues to accumulate hurt, treachery, and deceit. The majority of folks get it wrong here. They believe that years of deliberate damage may be undone if they express regret at the last minute. Apologies, however, don't change habits. Saying "I'm sorry," but still acting in the same way is like raining water on a burning building and expecting it to appreciate it. Performance has no influence on divine justice. It considers consistency rather than confession. People could have been duped by your adversaries. It's possible that their repentance was sufficiently good to elicit pity or even commendation. However, Divine justice recognizes the motivation behind the situation that others do not. It distinguishes between genuine guilt and guilt as a ploy. When it's the latter, no amount of prayer, fasting, or emotional pleading can reverse the course of events. Because this is the reality. They made an investment in suffering. They planted it, gave it water, and observed its growth. They will now retreat to destruction. It's because divine rule is righteous, not because God is cruel. You cannot treat people like you're insignificant and expect the world to see you as sacred. Accountability isn't that. Delusion is what it is. Change, not despair, is the path to true kindness. The right to protest after judgment is rendered is also lost when someone avoids the difficult phase, which is taking responsibility for the harm and fixing the pattern. They were careless not just with other people, but also with themselves. What you have never attempted to change cannot be fixed by prayer. Noise does not move divine justice. It awaits a shift. And judgment won't waver if change never materializes. 10th, there is a reason why the selected are safeguarded. They are not untouchable. Individuals who possess heavenly favor are often seen as having hubris or good fortune. Being bulletproof, however, is not a prerequisite for selection. It has to do with positioning. Because harm didn't attempt to reach you, you weren't saved. Because your perseverance served a purpose, you were kept alive throughout it. You were intended to outlive it, not just for your own sake, but also to expose and serve as a godly example for those who oppose you. Your adversaries have never comprehended this. They believed they were only going for an individual. They were unaware that they were putting a heavenly task to the test. They thought that because of your perseverance, you were sluggish to retaliate or easy to manipulate. They thought vulnerability was the same as grace. Passivity, however, is not protection. It's a tactic. You were preserved to give their acts a background and a witness, not to demonstrate your invincibility. You wouldn't have learnt a lesson if you had fallen. They would have left believing they had triumphed if you had broken beyond repair. However, your tranquility, survival, and ascent weren't random events. They served as proof. They were gifts from God. Your presence turned into a mirror, proof that the weapon that was created failed. It was because you were covered, not because it wasn't lethal. Furthermore, the purpose of that covering was not to pamper you. It served to emphasize the fact that when someone attempts to overthrow the selected, they are not opposing an individual, but rather the system that put them in that position. And that type of defiance always has repercussions. Therefore, you are preserved not to hover above the turmoil, but to endure it. But you are not untouchable. Therefore, no one will be able to dispute who is given preference, and why when the dust settles and judgment is handed down. You were never shielded for your own comfort. For clarification, you were shielded, so that the lesson they refuse to absorb in any other manner may be their judgment. Number 11. God's judgment corrects by collapsing, not by humiliating. It's simple to believe that heavenly judgment is only about spectacle or retribution. However, God has no interest in entertaining you. Your enemy's breakdown is for their awakening, not for your amusement. Divine retribution is not trivial. It's accurate. Making fun of them doesn't destroy them. It dispels the illusion they created of themselves that they were impervious to criticism, above the law, and untouchable. The fall is not accidental. It is deliberate. It deprives them of the falsehoods they use to defend their actions in addition to their authority. The collapse is internal as well as outward. They are ultimately forced to confront the manipulator, liar, and traitor versions of themselves that they have been avoiding. Judgment removes the mask, so they may see who they have become, not to embarrass them in front of others. It's also not fast. Piece by piece, the collapse is allowed to occur by divine judgment. Reputation deteriorates. Relationships fall apart. Their reliance on admiration, control, and status slips through their fingers. To dispel the delusion that they were ever in charge in the first place, not to destroy them irreparably. God corrects in this way, by taking away everything they trusted that wasn't true. He doesn't have to yell. He simply allows the walls to collapse under the weight of their own decisions. And if they're willing, They may finally comprehend the reality they've been avoiding for so long amid that rubble. It's benevolence disguised as harshness. Therefore, don't want disgrace when they collapse. Seek revelation. Seek for the intersection between conceit and reality, where authority ends, when quiet and ego collide. It isn't unkind. That's justice. It's not about you seeing them pay. It's about them finally recognizing who they actually are and who they never were. Number 12, their collapse will resonate in the same halls they sought to quiet you in. There's a certain hubris that comes with attempting to ruin someone softly. Your adversaries didn't only oppose you. They handpicked an audience. They made up stories, whispered in corners, and mobilized support based on ego rather than reality. They wanted you to be unimportant, unheard, and discredited.